there is a little bit of this chasing of perfection that we do a lot in the culture of like, if I could just get a perfectly regulated nervous system, then everything will be okay. Your nervous system is designed to move in and out of regulation. We're actually the most healthy when we can go far from equilibrium. There's a little bit of a problem with the idea of seeking a perfectly regulated nervous system. We're not designed to be calm all the time, and nor is a very rich and exciting and engaging life something that you experience as steady and calm and even.
Dr. Aidan Kinsella practices a unique form of chiropractic. She helps people repattern their nervous system to navigate physical and emotional pain and discover the opportunity for personal growth and self-empowerment that lies in every discomfort. Aidan, so there's a lot of talk nowadays about how to regulate our nervous system and how to use that to improve and transform our lives. Where do we even begin? How do we do that?
So, one of the things I hear when I hear people talk about wanting to regulate their nervous system, for one, it's really exciting for me because as someone who's worked with the nervous system for almost 20 years, when I first opened my practice, I had to teach people when they came into my office as a chiropractor what the nervous system was and why it was important and the role it played in our our health and the healing of our body, as well as our overall experience of, like you're saying, the external world. So we're in an exciting time that the average person knows they have a nervous system and has at least some sense that the nervous system has a role to play in how we heal and in what our experience of our life is. And I think what's tricky is that there is a little bit of this chasing of perfection that we do a lot in the culture of like, if I could just get a perfectly regulated nervous system, then everything will be okay. And what I like to sort of unpack with that a little bit is that your nervous system is designed to move in and out of regulation. We're actually the most healthy when we can go far from equilibrium. So, become really stressed for a moment and then come back to an experience of centeredness or of presence. But I think that um, there's a little bit of a problem with the idea of seeking a perfectly regulated nervous system because it's kind of code word for being calm all the time. And I think as human beings, we're not designed to be calm all the time, and nor is a very rich and exciting and engaging life something that you experience as steady and calm and even. So I just like to touch on that right away because I think well, it's important for us to find all the tools we can to find a sense of presence with our experience and with ourselves and to become more embodied and to be able to regulate ourselves. That actually the healthy nervous system is one that has a wide range that can go far from equilibrium, that can become very dysregulated and then find a way back to centeredness.
I want to hear so much more about that because that's already like so different than most of the things we hear. Why? Why is it so important and healthy to be able to be dysregulated?
Because we grow from stress. So I think stress gets this bad rap of being a bad thing. That if you're stressed that it's not okay, but actually all the way down to our physiology and our biochemistry, we don't grow without stress. We don't grow without pressure. I mean, if you're in the gym and you want to get stronger, you have to add stress. You have to add weight, whether that's your body weight or you're lifting something heavy or you're trying to balance. We actually grow and develop a different strength and flexibility and capacity in response to some kind of stressor. So, um, I think also two people talk about good stress and bad stress, and our nervous system doesn't really discern between good stress and bad stress.
Why doesn't our nervous system discern? And then what is the definition of good and bad stress?
Yeah. So your nervous system goes in and out of a stress response or a healing response. We're designed to can move kind of through this range of experience. And how I think about or talk about stress for the body is when in a given moment, whatever's happening, I don't have the energy, the information, or the capacity to adapt to it. So there are many things that happen throughout your day that you're just adapting to all the time. It's like learning, I got it, I can do it. That's new. Got to figure it out, and then I keep moving through. And then we know what a moment's like when you can't. You're like, ah, this is too much. And sometimes we'll experience that as overwhelm. This, I think, is a really good basic way to think about it. Is just like, ah, I can't. And you see me doing this with my hands because what we do internally is we brace. And so this happens very much physically in your body that you may experience that as you don't breathe, your body becomes tight, but your actual nerves become tight. So you have a sheath that goes around the brain and around the nerves called the dura, and that actually tightens when we go into a stress response. And what that does is it actually slows down the amount of information that we could process. So stress really is the experience of I can't totally process or integrate or adapt to this in this moment. So it's a bracing and a slowing down. It's like putting the brakes on change. Your nervous system has gas and brakes. Like we can go and grow and learn and change and adapt. And then we need to like slow things down or even sometimes come to a screeching halt. So that is the body's experience of stress. It's like change I can adapt to and learn from and grow in response to, and then change that suddenly I feel like, uh-oh, I can't. And I need something else before I can go further. So I think what we interpret as good and bad is is not about the stress itself, but is about an internal sense of capacity. As long as I feel like I have the capacity, then I'm going to call that stress good. And when I feel like I don't have the capacity, I might be then calling that stress bad. But the stress itself and the nervous system's capacity for it isn't has nothing to do with good and bad and really has to do with bandwidth.
Does this become then about expanding our capacity? Is that the whole point? Or is it just about being in acceptance and at ease with what's there?
I think those two things go together. So, yes, a increase in your capacity means I can let more life in. I can experience a broader range of my experience. But the fastest way to increase your capacity is to accept what is. So even if that means that in a moment that I'm feeling overwhelmed or I'm feeling incapable or I'm feeling frustrated, that the way to increase my capacity isn't to try to not feel that way, but is actually to accept that in this moment I'm feeling overwhelmed.
There's so much talk nowadays on just all over the internet and especially in personal growth, leaning communities about managing our emotions. And it seems somehow related to what you're talking about when like stress or overwhelm or like something that feels like a lot to be with right now. And there's this thing, this belief that that's something we need to manage or resolve or cast aside to somehow move forward in life. How does that interlink with what we're just talking about in terms of acceptance and accepting our capacity? Because it feels like it's very common for people to try to avoid to feel their emotions, but it's also important. I think people don't want to stay stuck in them either. So how do
Hmm.
like if I'm someone right now that I'm navigating something that feels like a little bit too much for me emotionally, how do I unpack that? Where do I go from there?
Emotions are data points. They're really our nervous system's way of detecting change and initiating a response to change. So, from a very primal protective place, if something feels uncomfortable, our knee jerk response is to move away from it. And that's part of our survival system. You know, think about that even below emotion, just on a physiological level. If you touch a hot stove, what do? Your hand yanks away, right? That's to protect you. We need that instinct to move away from what's uncomfortable. However, most of growth in life requires some discomfort. And absolutely, the things that are most life giving and fulfilling usually require quite a bit of discomfort and really even pain. So, our capacity to breathe and stay present with ourselves and our experience, which means being able to feel what we're feeling, including emotions that, we kind of term as negative, but are the ones that are maybe a little more uncomfortable, Those might be fear or sadness or rage or grief or disgust or shame, some of these kind of really primal data points that are actually giving us information about what we need to adapt to, what's changing, maybe within our own body or in our own experience or changing in our environment. So when we can orient to sensation in our body and to the experience of our emotions as information, then we're able to cultivate a response to that that helps us adapt and helps us change and helps us grow. But the kind of key thing is that when it's uncomfortable, we've got this knee jerk response, this physiological intelligence that's really intelligent that says, uh oh, yikes, pull away. And cultivating the tools that help us stay a moment longer, even if it's just a split second, even just a beat, the length of a breath, to just pause. And that's a nervous system regulation tool, just to take a breath and allow a different layer of our brain, a different part of our innate intelligence to scan and recognize, is in this moment, is this something that I need to move away from? Or is this something that I need to learn from?
What's happening in our brain, in our body, when we're in that moment and we do take a breath? Like what does that actually do for us that allows us to deal with the situation differently?
I am a breath helps the most kind of primal basic part of your nervous system experience a sense of certainty for a moment. So it's literally like saying, "Here I am," and from that sort of centeredness of "Here I am," then we're are more able to orient to what's happening within us or around us, and uh, our nervous systems and our different layers of our brains reaction to things is so fast. And there's so much data in that reaction. Your nervous system is a pattern generator. So it has a remembering of everything that you've ever experienced. And even things that your ancestors experienced that when we're born, there's an intelligence even around the cells that we have this epigenetic information that we remember from even our, past lifetimes from our ancestors. There's a whole field of information. And so, what it is that your nervous system, which is this finely tuned instrument that's picking up on subtle shifts and changes inside you and around you all the time, is also has all this deep, deep remembering. And so, in a split second, there's so much information that your nervous system is processing, and so many sort of automatic or autopilot reactions that are programmed in that when we take a breath, especially intentionally, so something's uncomfortable, something's overwhelming, something freaks us out, and we just pause and take a breath. You're harnessing your the sort of internal power that you have in your consciousness to say, what's here? Here I am. What's here? And then it opens up a field of opportunity to respond to what's happening versus just react from an autopilot place or from a survival place.
You touched on a lot of things that, as you know, I'm an absolute geek about, and I want to learn about all of it. So one of the pieces that you touched on was how there's a body that we're working with, which has emotions, which has physiological sensations, has a nervous system, and there's a field. Could you expand into that a little bit more? And I'll give you a specific direction. So when you're doing your NSA work, which I have been so blessed and privileged, and I get giddy every single time I get to be trained by you, you are working with the body and the nervous system and the field and so much more. You're working with all of it at the same time. How does it all come together? And like in the work that you do, like how does, because what I've experienced with your work is unlike any other modality I've ever tried. It feels like a such a precise, like millimetric bullseye experience of having whatever is most needed for me to process. Just it feels like my whole body can go around that thing that felt like too much or too hard, and it's incredible. Like I've never experienced anything like it. So can you help me understand how it all works together?
Yeah, so let me back up a little bit and just explain a little bit about the work I do, because that might help. So the work I do is called Network Spinal, and it's a chiropractic technique, but it's very different than traditional chiropractic. The doctor who developed this technique was asking a very specific question in the development of the work, which was, where can I put the least amount of force into the nervous system that results in the greatest amount of nonlinear change, which is basically learning. How do I interact with the nervous system in a way that enhances self awareness, self regulation, repatterning, growth, adaptation, evolution? And so it had him look at what was really pretty well established. This is in the 1980s in the field of chiropractic and what we understood even at that point about nervous system physiology differently and for a different purpose and outcome. And really one that was about helping the system shift out of bracing against change and into a change state. Okay. So when you become stressed for any reason, your spinal cord tightens. And what that does is it actually mutes your internal awareness. So it turns the volume way down on what it is you're experiencing inside. At the same time, when we're in a stress response, our sensitivity to pain increases. So the threshold at which I'll feel pain lowers. So I, at the simultaneously in a stress response in the body, feel my body less. I'm less aware of the kind of micro sensations and my emotions, but I'm hyper aware of pain. And this is a great adaptive state to run for your life or save your life. Okay. This is a great way to move away from what could be dangerous. It allows us to become hyper focused on what's happening outside of us and react to it really fast. Okay. But that same state of not being able to really track or feel what's happening inside, and being ultra sensitive to what's uncomfortable is not a great state for healing. It's not a place that we heal inside of. So the work that I do makes a very, very precise contact on the spine that essentially cues the more conscious part of the brain to become aware of what's happening, to become aware of that spinal cord tension pattern, to become aware of that stress physiology. And so when I make this very gentle, very precise contact, it allows your brain and body an opportunity to take a breath, to go, what's happening? Oh, here I am, right here in this moment in time and space. And often in that moment when a person's lying on the table, whatever initiated that stress response is not happening in that exact moment. It's very rare that the thing that we're stressed about is happening in the exact moment. It's usually something that happened yesterday or last week or when we were two, or maybe in our grandparents' lifetime that we're reacting to now, or some anticipated stress that could be happening tomorrow or next week or 10 years from now. So, when the nervous system and the body has an opportunity to orient to the present moment, most of the bracing isn't necessary. So, when I make this very gentle, very precise contact, it helps your brain and body orient to the moment. And instantly, spontaneously, because of the innate intelligence within you, the body just lets go. Just lets go of that bracing really instantly. So, to come back to what you're speaking about of this experience of the precision of where you feel really met in by this work in a moment that allows you suddenly to just process whatever it is was being unprocessed is a function of your nervous system switching instantaneously from bracing against change to all that energy that it was spending bracing becoming instantly available to learn, grow, heal, respond, make a change, awaken to something. So, then to speak to your other question, you were saying that how is this work that's very physiological and physical and embodied connected to energy or to your field? And so to answer that, I would say that you can think about your nervous system like a very refined antenna, and this, picking up on subtle information within you and around you all the time. And that could be very tangible things like the biochemical processes that are happening in your body and changes in temperature or in the environment around you, who's around you, what's happening, the circumstances you're in. And also in the most sort of expansive way you want to think about that. Also able to sense, feel, and respond to subtle shifts in a collective field between you and other people, a collective field of consciousness, even a multidimensional reality where I can sense, feel, and respond to what's happening now or what's happening in another plane of existence. So your nervous system functions like this antenna, and its capacity to be at ease is going to increase the capacity of information that we can process. The more tight, braced, restricted, defensive the nervous system is, it narrows the focus of what we're able to respond to. And I just want to speak again to how intelligent that is. That in a moment where maybe you didn't sleep well, maybe you haven't exercised, maybe you had a hard day yesterday, when your system is feeling like I don't have a lot of bandwidth right now, to narrow the range of information that you have to process is helpful. Okay? To live in that state is not helpful because it means we live in a kind of state where every day is overwhelming. So when I make this very gentle, very precise contact on the spine at the spinal gateway, and it cues the brain to become aware of what's happening, what happens is that bracing internally in the nervous system just goes, oh, I could just let go. I don't have to brace against something that's not happening right now. And in that letting go, there's a liberation of energy. There's more physiological, physical life force energy, emotional, mental, cognitive capacity instantly available, as well as a learning that's happening. That when your brain and body have the chance to pause, reflect, and let go of something, that same strategy is more available to us in a future moment.
I'm thinking like someone listening to this and they're like, they have an important business decision, or it's like a really hard time in business right now, or in personal relationships, like wherever it is in their life where it feels like there's like two options, or you can only
Hmm.
see this much. It's the reason why this work, this NSA practice that you do so powerful, because in those moments when people are indeed like thinking that there's only two ways to solve this, or like you can barely see with clarity even what's in front of you, by you having your whole system go, all of a sudden there aren't two options, there are like 17,000 or infinite, and there's so many ways to solve this. Is that like the practical impact that someone experiences when they do it consistently? Is that all of a sudden, even when things that are uncomfortable or challenging come to you, you just have more options?
Absolutely. And I think people describe that in different ways. So, well, that's a beautiful description of how a more flexible nervous system can respond. People describe that experience, in a way that's unique to their experience. But one of the things that I like to say is it's almost like installing a pause button between you and life. That, and network spinal is not the only thing that can cultivate that for you. Of course, there's breathwork practices. There's all different kinds of somatic and awareness practices that help us come in contact with our nervous system and our embodiment. And so this isn't the only tool that will do that, but it is definitely a very powerful one for it. And so when I say this pause button, it says that, life happens or something happens, and there's just this split second moment, and in that split second moment, I'm far more capable of discerning, is this really something I need to brace against? And most of the time, no. Most of the things that are happening in our everyday experience, for those of us listening probably to this podcast, are not in that moment a life or death threatening thing that we really need that full activation of our survival system. It's not the most helpful response. However, it does get triggered, it does get activated so quickly, and so to have that split second pause that's, even just the length of being able to take a breath, inhale and exhale, means that a whole, sense of the world and a sense of who we are and what's possible can just soften, and we can become more open to what's really here, and to, like you said, those infinite possibilities of how we might be able to work with or move forward or learn from or grow or be or behave or react and respond to what's happening.
There are two things I'm super excited to ask you about. One is you mentioned something that I'm learning now for the first time, I think, which I'm fully aware that obviously things that we have experienced in our past, whether it is when we were 2 years old in our childhood or like busy work week, like something like that, that can accumulate stress in our body. You mentioned something that I thought was fascinating, which is things in the future that have not happened yet, that we're bracing ourselves up against, can also build up a lot of tension in our body and narrow our capacity to be with life. Can you expand on that? Because at least to me, that's new. And I would imagine for a lot of people who are entrepreneurial or want to grow and expand in life, that's probably happening as well, not just the past.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of comes back to what we were saying, that stress is stress. And, good stress and bad stress is something we sort of superimpose on top of it. And we're either saying this is the kind of stress that I like versus this is the kind of stress I don't
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
or this is the kind of stress I feel like I have a capacity for. And this is the kind of stress that I feel incompetent in the face of. And so that's going to be really personal, and it's going to be based on, your personality and what your natural aptitudes are, as well as what the wisdom of your experiences. And so somebody who's entrepreneurial tends to thrive in a little bit more uncertainty than somebody who isn't, or isn't entrepreneurial. Somebody who, gets excited in the unpredictability of the creative process or of bringing something into form. Whereas another person, in response to that same thing, would feel overwhelmed and, and that would experience that stress as negative. So you're going to have, people are on a spectrum in that way of what they respond to. However, what's true about all of us is that when faced with uncertainty or the unknown, your nervous system is hardwired to brace. If I tell you you're going to go around that corner and something's going to happen, the nervous system is going to go, okay, let me prepare for danger here. Okay. And the, at the same time, you might be a person who gets excited about that sense of danger, or you might be a person who is freaked out and wants to run the other way. But the nervous system response is the same, which is this preparation for this. However, I don't know if you've heard that quote, that the difference between fear and excitement is a breath.
Oh,
And that was I'm not remembering his name right now, but he was the founder of Gestalt therapy. But the only difference between fear and excitement is a breath. So the excitation of our nervous system, that preparation for change, essentially, is what happens in response to uncertainty and the unknown. So we are responding to what is happening and to what our nervous system is anticipating could happen, might happen, is going to happen. So we can be in a constant state of worry and concern and stress about what's about to happen, or we could be in a state of excitement and anticipation and sort of positive anticipation of what's going to happen. But the physiology, that the activation of our nervous system is the same.
this is fascinating. How did you even come across this field?
This work has been around since the late 1980s, with Donald Epstein as the founder of the work, as a chiropractor. And when I was 14, I was in a car accident and I had a pretty severe whiplash injury to my neck. And my mom had gone to chiropractor, so as a child growing up, chiropractic was part of the options of healthcare that we participated in. And at the time, the chiropractor we were seeing was a pretty heavy-handed structural like more like sports therapy type chiropractor. And after that accident, I had so much pain and inflammation in my neck. My mom took me to somebody who did network because it was gentle, because we use this very light touch on the spine. So she took me to someone who did that because it was gentle. And um, I loved the care. And my father was the one who was taking me to the appointments. It was going 3 times a week for the first several weeks. And my chiropractor at the time told my father, get on the table, I'll take care of you too. And and he was like, I don't know if this is doing anything. You're just poking me in the butt. My back still hurts. I don't know about this. A little skeptical about it. but but it's so gentle that there was also nothing really to dislike about it. He just was a little skeptical about its efficacy. And over the course of the following several months, I watched my father just wake up, just like come alive in his body and start to make some big changes in his life. He quit smoking cigarettes, he started exercising. It's like just a part of him that had been dormant in his own health and vitality came online and came awake. And so it was something that I stayed with. I was under network care all through my teen years from 14 on. When I moved to California, I started care with a doctor out here in San Francisco, and at that time, I had more of a experience of kind of waking up to who I am as a result of the care. That this practice deepened into a greater sense of who I was and how it is I was responding to things, and starting to make choices from that place versus choices from a place of maybe more of a survival response. And I decided when I was 19 that this is what I wanted to do. And so I went to chiropractic school and been in practice now. It'll be 18 years this year.
I'm so glad I asked that because I didn't know that about you. Um, there seems to be a common thread of like some like a very beautiful outcome, if you want to call that, of doing this type of work that you shared happened with you with your dad. I recognize that in myself of being trained by you over the years, even though I only get to do it at events, but it's always something I look forward to. Which is to come like almost like a coming home to a deeper sense of who we are and to be able to operate from that place. And I feel like nowadays that's something that people really look for, to
Mhm.
stop living based on a script, based on a survival response, based on what they should be doing or we're told to do, and just like come home to ourselves. How is it that this work does that? Because that seems to be a common thread. Why does it all come back to being here, home, and living from that place?
Well, I think it's a function again of how our nervous system is designed to be efficient, is to do as much as possible on autopilot. However, when we are on autopilot, most of how we're reacting and responding in a moment is based on what was painful in the past and trying to protect us from what was painful in the past and projecting the potential of that pain onto our future. And so it sort of keeps us actually in lockstep with what has been painful in the past. So, just as to give you a more tangible example, if I was in a really painful relationship and I'm now out of that relationship, that the remembering of that comes with me into not even before I even get into a new relationship, even in my thinking about a new relationship is going to be so informed by what was painful in that past relationship. And when it goes unprocessed, when we don't take the time to become more present now in this moment with what I might have skipped over while I was surviving a past moment, then I'm going to project that same past into my future. And I'm likely to continue to experience something similar until I have a moment to digest it more fully. So you take this is kind of how our nervous system functions, and you put it in this environment at the pace that our world moves at now. The amount of information that comes across you in a day is more than your ancestors had to process in a lifetime. Okay. So there's this, we're just trying to keep up with how much information forces a lot of that um, digesting and processing of our experience onto the back burner. And so we are functioning really to adapt to this world from a survival physiology place. And in fact, the world rewards us for that. So in a world, in a capitalist society, in a world that's, functions so much around what we're able to produce, the more I'm able to sort of suppress, deny, dismiss, ignore, dominate my body so that I can just continue producing and moving is going to actually move me ahead in life for a period of time until my body catches up with me, right? Until the cost of that catches up with me. So And it will often first come in the experience of pain. We'll start to have more pain, and that could be physical, like your actual physical body starts to hurt more, or it can be emotional pain or psychological pain. And so, meaning that suddenly there's a pain that's coming between me and life. I'm not able to keep going. I'm getting interrupted. And it's what's so frustrating about pain is that it interrupts us. And often will sometimes even interrupt the very things that help me do what I'm doing. For example, if a big way that I manage the stress in my life is I like to run, because if I run, then it just helps. I feel more connected. I feel more alive. It helps me just disconnect from all that stress. I have more energy. Well, it's very common for the pain that the body will use to interrupt us, to interrupt the very thing that we love doing that helps us manage the stress. But it's on purpose and it's intelligent because then we're forced to reckon with whatever that strategy was helping us avoid.
Wow. So obviously, I think it's impossible to be a human being and not see ourselves in that. I can think
Yeah.
of 1,000 ways that has happened in my life. I can
Yeah.
think of a billion ways that it has happened in the lives of people that I know. That's a really hard, like, it feels like a hard place to be in when there's this really painful thing that has even, like you're saying, stopped you to the point and invited you to stop to the point where it gets rid of all coping mechanisms, of all
Yeah.
the ways that you were handling the stress. If I'm listening to this right now and that's where I'm at, where do I go? What do I do?
I think it's a really important moment to ask for help. And that could be, from a friend, from a community member, or from a practitioner, from somebody whose body of work is deeply rooted in nervous system healing. So it could be a somatic practitioner, it could be a breathwork practitioner, it could be a network spinal chiropractor, it could be, anybody that is going to, in that moment, help you in your nervous system heal and recalibrate. So I think it's an essential and important time to ask for help.
Yeah. I feel like we live in a culture where asking for help is seen as like weakness. And in the most challenging moments of my life, I like having the wherewithal to be like, maybe I could even handle this on my own, but it would take me like 10 years and I'm not willing to wait. So like having the wherewithal to be vulnerable and be humble and ask for help has completely been a game changer. And
Yeah.
actually, you might not know this, but like I got trained by you through like some of the most challenging periods of my life a couple of weeks ago, a couple of years ago, and it was a game changer. Like there's an expansion that's allowed in the vulnerability of being like, I would love to receive help right now. So that's beautiful. Thanks for speaking to that.
Yeah, we don't heal alone. We don't heal in isolation. And so when we ask for help or we allow those around who are often trying to help us, we just allow them to, the people who care about us to help us, we're far more likely to heal. And if we try to do it all by ourselves, even if it feels like we're getting through, we're most likely just kicking the can down the road. And the body is often what will sort of bring you to your knees. Into we can, intentionally and consciously work on and sort of allow more, try to receive more, to be cultivate that vulnerability and that asking. And if we don't, then life will often bring us to a moment where we don't have any other choice. That could be that you, you know, you have so much pain that you're not able to stand up and you need help. So it's going to happen one way or another. We're all going to come to a point in our life where we need each other. And so when we can start to orient to that on purpose and sooner and intentionally, it's usually a more pleasurable experience.
I mean, if I had to choose, would I rather change with pain and by myself, or would I rather change before I'm brought to my knees with support? It's like any day. It's a no brainer.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think we can, we would all agree with you there. Like, which would you rather? but the actual felt experience of opening yourself up to receive care and support might be so against the grain of something that you've experienced in the past or the way that you were taught and conditioned by the culture that our capacity to continue to choose what's familiar and excruciating is huge, versus to choose what might be a lot easier but is uncomfortable and because it goes against our conditioning. They're both painful, so there's no way around the pain. So it's not like a painful and isolated or vulnerable, connected, and easy. No, it's painful and isolated or painful and connected. They're both painful. But when we have connection, then we have a different capacity to face that pain and learn from it and grow from it.
Aidan, I am so grateful for the many, many moments where you've been that space for me of
Hmm.
healing in connection. And if anyone listening to this is open to that and would love to explore what working with you looks like, I just want to encourage everyone to do so. And if that's something that they want, how can they learn more about you and explore the possibility of working with you?
Yeah, so my practice is located in San Francisco, California, and the name of my practice is Verve Wellness Studio, VERVE. And anybody who's interested in learning a little bit more about the care, or if you're local and you're interested in what it would look like to come in and experience it, so the best thing is to go to my website. And there's a tab on every page to book a call, and you can book a free phone call with me. Just to learn a little bit more or to find out more about what the process is. Or even if you're somebody listening to this and you're not located in San Francisco, you're in some other part of the country here in the US or in some part of the world, and you're curious to know more, or if there's somebody who does what I do close to you, you could still go to my website and book a call. I'd be happy to speak with you and share more, hear more about what it is that's going on with you that you think this work might be supportive for, and direct you to somebody in your area who does this work because there's practitioners all over the world. And if there isn't somebody, then what other tools might be available that have a similar outcome?
Beautiful. All of that will be linked in the description. Aidan, as always, thank you.